Welcome back to the Group Practice Accelerator podcast, brought to you by Polaris Healthcare Partners, where we leverage decades of healthcare and business experience to drive growth in successful group practices just like yours. If you're a healthcare entrepreneur and you're interested in building, scaling, or exiting your group practice, you've found not only the industry's leading resource for business education, but a team of trusted advisors dedicated to helping you achieve and exceed your goals. In short, the team at Polaris creates clarity, confidence, and results. I'm your host, Jamie Falosh, and the Group Practice Accelerator podcast is on the air. Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today because we've got a great episode planned with some guests that you'll definitely want to hear from. But before we introduce them, just a quick reminder that the Polaris team will be holding a free pre-conference workshop with cocktails at the AAO meeting in Philadelphia. And you don't want to miss this. The AAO runs from the 24th to the 27th, and our free workshop will be on Thursday the 24th at the Convention Center. And we're going to be in room 201B from 4:30 to 6:30. I know I've mentioned this in the last couple of episodes that the workshop's meant to be interactive. So bring your questions because we want it to be a conversation as well. And important to note is that the workshop's designed to provide you with an action plan on how to get the highest value from your business. And that's whether you're looking to drive growth or whether you're thinking about an exit. So be sure to reserve your seat for the free workshop by visiting polarishealthcarepartners.com/AAO. All right, on to today's topic. Well, like I'm sure a lot of you do, I subscribe to Becker's Dental and DSO Review newsletter, and I like their press releases and articles relevant to our world and the healthcare world in general. But the reason I mention it is because an article that reached my inbox recently discussed the top challenges cited by doctors, and among them, not surprisingly, were insurance issues, including the complexities of reimbursement. Again, not breaking news for most of you listening, but we all know that navigating that universe isn't easy, and it's not for the inexperienced, is it? Well, I definitely don't want to get over my skis on insurance matters because I'm a big fan of seeking out experts who live and breathe just that kind of thing. Well, today's guest have this kind of experience, and we feel they are the experts at what they do, not only for Polaris clients, but for so many others. And if you read that article and it resonated with you, well, today's episode is perfectly timed. So in the spirit of collaboration and sharing best practices and resources, our guests are going to help us alleviate some of those complexities. With me today, we have two special guests from Dental Advocacy Group, Katina Satterfield and Cynthia Roberts, who specialize in ironing out insurance and reimbursement and so much more. And we have our very own Fractional COO executive, Adin Bradley, who often works closely with Katina, Cynthia, and team as he works to optimize operations and drive revenue growth for Polaris clients. Katina, Cynthia, and Adin, welcome to the show.
Great to be here.
Thank you.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Well, I'm excited to talk to all of you today. I haven't had a sneak peek into how you all work together being on site with you, but I know that you share a lot of mutual clients and we hear a lot about the great work that you do. So I want to jump in with that. Katina and Cynthia, why don't you start by telling us who and what DAG or Dental Advocacy Group is, and then a bit about yourselves and your roles at the group.
Of course. Yes, DAG is definitely easier to say. So acronyms are our best friend, right? Dental Advocacy Group itself, we offer some unique solutions for dental practices to help simplify their insurance contracts, which kind of sounds like, what? You can really do that? But while we do that, we're also maximizing the insurance reimbursement and increasing their overall revenue, which is a win. So that's kind of high level. We'll break down into more specifics throughout the podcast. For me specifically, I've been in dentistry now for 30 years, from one doctor single practices to 18 location group practices, participating as either their office manager or a regional manager or a COO. So I feel like I have a wide variety of dental knowledge, and now being with DAG for the last 3 years, we've got to dig into the insurance world, which with my 23 years being in the practice itself, that's something that you don't realize how complex it is. When I came to DAG, I felt like I knew it all, but I didn't. But now I feel like I'm definitely an expert on the insurance, being with DAG for 3 years, getting to dive in and see all of the complexities of how insurances really work.
And I'm sure there are plenty.
Lots.
Yeah, and I'm Cynthia Roberts, part of the amazing DAG team. And, it's really funny. I never actually planned on working in dentistry. I started out just helping a friend with her practice, thinking I'd be there for just a couple of months. But here I am, over 20 years later, still in the industry and loving it. And very much similar to Katina's background, I've been in practice management in all different types of practices, which led into consulting. So helping the dental practices increase profitability and run more efficiently. That was kind of my jam. So DAG was a great resource for my consulting clients. So we did partner together for several years. But before that, I was actually worked in a practice that we were DAG clients. So I knew firsthand how they impacted our overall revenue. So eventually it just made sense for me to join DAG full time because we shared that same mission of helping practices get paid what they deserve while running a smarter business.
Well, wonderful. It sounds like you both bring so much to the table. And Cynthia, in case you didn't know this before, once you're in dental, you can't leave. I mean, Katina and I know this.
Really
We've
trap
been
you.
in this 30 years as well as Adin. So yeah, you're stuck. You're stuck. And we're glad to have you. So it's a bonus for all of us. And Adin, I want to jump over to you for a minute because I know you work with Katina and Cynthia quite frequently. So how are you working with them and what does that look like for you when you go into practices? What are some of the things that you're looking for, or like what does that need show up like when you're talking with a client?
Yeah, great question. If I can just kind of reference a recent podcast we talked about with train wrecks and silver bullets, I think of the terminology we use, which we refer to as reactionary versus proactive.
Yeah.
And since we've begun the fractional COO vertical, we have become far more integrated into the operation. And instead of working with principals and advising them, this has become a more in-depth engagement where the operations teams are leading, reporting generally to me and myself then to the principals, which has given me a greater look at the operational performance. So, to answer your question specifically, as I get more into the business and see the operations, I am looking for a couple key areas. First and foremost is the culture of the organization. Is there like a clear vision and their processes? And more importantly, I like to ask people to define their role, how they interpret their role to be. And from there, we can get a better look at if we've got people issues or process issues. And one of the more common areas we have outside of staffing that most people have has been revenue cycle. It is generally the cause of great concern as cash flow starts to dwindle and wages and fixed costs start to outpace the amount of revenue that's generated through a general PPO practice. And that is just a little teaser into how Katina and I met and how DAG helped us solve an issue that a lot of group practices had as it came to top line revenue and how much they controlled their ability to do that.
Oh, got it. Katina and Cynthia, hearing what Aiden looks for and the observations he makes, what's your typical first move with a client? I mean, understanding that when we're going in there, we're not at optimal profitability. And that's the overarching issue, of course. So, how do you go about uncovering those big misses, I'll call them, that you can help turn around?
Sure. Well, first of all, each practice has their own challenges, right? And their own pain points. So it's just having a in-depth conversation where we're seeing what those are, seeing how we can help them. If we feel like it's something we can help with, we do what's called a fee schedule analysis. So we're really taking a deep dive into their financials as far as insurance billing, their UCR. We're looking at how the doctors are credentialed because a lot of the issues are especially the multi-doctor practices. Each doctor is credentialed differently, which causes a lot of confusion in the front office when they're trying to quote fees because each doctor has all these different fee schedules. So we're trying to align that where it mirrors each other to make it simple for the practice to keep up with. And we're also looking at all of the different plans that they have and their current fees. During that analysis, we can look and see what they have actually billed and collected over the last 12 months with each individual plan. So from there, we take and we have pre-negotiated fee schedules. So we can look at that fee schedule and we can show the incremental increase that the office would get if they do nothing different except change the way that they're credentialed. And we're going to optimize the way they're credentialed, which will be less confusion for the office and just simplify things. The cool thing about this analysis is it is complementary because we want to make sure they're a great fit, first of all, for our services. And I think that goes to show with our 99% client retention rate that we choose really good practices that are good fits. Cynthia, you want to share a little bit more about the network sharing and how that component works?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you mentioned, when we're looking at the FSA, we're identifying all the different network participation. And we know that there's going to be some network sharing that's taking place, which is something most doctors don't even realize is happening in the practice until they might start noticing unexpected drops in reimbursements. And when a practice signs an insurance contract, they think they're agreeing to like one set of fees with that payer. But in reality, many of these agreements allow insurance carriers to lease out the practice's fees to other networks. And of course, they're going to look for the lowest fees that they can attach themselves to. So now the doctor's contracted rates aren't just being applied to the patients under that specific PPO. They're also being used by other insurance plans that they never agreed to participate with. So what this ends up causing is this lower reimbursement across the board. And a practice might start to think they're getting fair rates, but because their fees are being shared across multiple networks, they end up getting paid far less and less over time. So we are able to eliminate the network sharing through our solution.
Oh, that's wonderful. And that's great to hear. 99%. That's a big number.
Yes, our most proud statistic.
That's
Yes.
wonderful. That's a lot of happy clients. And I
Yes.
agree that, I mean, this can be tricky and it's really time consuming for the business itself. And it requires someone to be dedicated to it. And we've seen an awful lot of businesses leaving money on the table. So, talk a bit about what you're doing differently in the market. I want to make sure our listeners understand what a tremendous difference you all can make in terms of realizing their revenue potential.
Sure. It is a lot on the practice, especially having to re-credential. One of the things that we see that doesn't happen is most insurance companies will renegotiate every 2 years. And because it takes such energy and time to do that, and they go back and forth for months and months to do this. Sometimes it takes a year just to renegotiate a contract. So it's something that falls by the wayside and they don't do. You would think that that would be top of the mind and that they would want to do that quickly, but they're so busy with just their day-to-day, interaction with patients and trying to make it through the day sometimes that the renegotiation doesn't happen. So the cool thing about DAG is we take that off their plate. And really what makes us stand out and what we're doing differently is other companies have to go and negotiate those fee schedules, which does take 12 to 18 months to make that happen. Ours are pre-negotiated. So we've already went and done that hard work. So it goes by their zip code. And when we do this analysis, we turn the analysis around in about 7 to 10 days. So in 7 to 10 days, their negotiating is done and they have their fee schedule and what we can offer them. So that's one thing that definitely sets us apart is we have those pre-negotiated fee schedules and we can put them in place pretty quickly.
I'll say one other thing that sets us apart too is that we're completely independent. So, a lot of companies in this space have some level of alignment with the insurance carriers, which limits their ability to truly advocate for the practice. So, we don't answer to insurance companies. We answer to our clients, and everything we do is focused on what's best for the practice, not what benefits an insurance carrier or another third party. And also, we don't just stop at getting practices signed up. We have a dedicated team of account managers who work closely with each office to make sure the strategies we implement actually stick. And what makes our account managers different is that every single one of them has worked or managed a dental practice. So they're not just reading from a manual, they understand the daily challenges, the workflow, the patient demands, the pressure of running a dental office. So I don't know about you, but I like to talk to someone who can relate to what I'm doing and they've been in their shoes. So that means that they're not just advising from the outside, they're guiding, troubleshooting, and making sure everything is working smoothly in real world practice. And I think that
Mhm.
definitely sets us apart.
Yeah. They also have internal goals. The account managers have internal goals to get that practice across the finish line in 6 months. So that is a very fast goal. A lot of times these things take 2 years to put in place. So 6 months is an amazing goal. We also offer a guarantee. So, with our services, if you are a good fit, we are a subscription based model because we not only do what we say we're going to do with getting the contracts optimized, but we also, in the future, we're doing your recredentialing and your renegotiating, getting you those higher fee schedules every couple years. We're also there to make sure that those network sharing arrangements don't get intertwined back in your practice. We're, just in the background, kind of working hard to make sure what they have stays like it is. And with our guarantee, we guarantee that our fee schedule will get the practice at least twice what they pay for our services, or we will do 6 months of services for free. I will proudly say that we've never had to use that guarantee because all of our clients, I mean, just saying twice the amount that they will get is very minimal because it's typically way more.
That's wonderful as well. And I kind of want to go back to something that Cynthia said a second ago. When you have someone that has walked in your shoes, has been in the practice, I think that makes you just 100 times more relatable. And I think you go in with a different mindset and a different approach when you're keeping track of these things, this ongoing monitoring and ongoing support that you offer. It puts you in a different position because you have been in the practice. You see how this impacts things. You see how it impacts revenue and the employees within the business and how that trickles down to every aspect of operations and the business itself. So I love that about you all. Now, I've got a three-part question. So, what if I'm just starting out? What if I'm a doctor that's new out there? I've got a new practice, and then what if I'm scaling my group practice? Or the third part is, what if I have a fee for service group?
Sure. I'll take the first one. What if I'm starting out? If you're starting out, you want to start out strong. You want to start out with a great fee schedule. You don't want to start out with a low fee schedule and then try to figure out how to get a higher fee schedule from there.
Mhm.
So, with our approach, we're an umbrella plan. So, it's one fee schedule with multiple payers. We have like 40 payers on our plan. So, you can do one contract, one fee schedule, and get the majority of most of the payers. There's a couple that don't participate with the umbrella. But with that being said, it's simple for the practice. They're getting a better fee schedule and they automatically get enrolled in all the directories. So their phone starts ringing. So they're getting new patients. It also helps them retain patients because they're in network. So the patients are getting a better treatment. So it's more cost efficient for them. So they're retaining those patients and they're growing quicker. And then, I feel like it's just easier for the practice as well.
Yeah, and I will say for the scaling, I mean, when a doctor is looking to scale their practice, we know consistency is everything. The bigger the practice, the more important it becomes to have a very streamlined, scalable strategy for insurance participation, fee schedules, and overall operational efficiencies. And one of the biggest challenges with scaling is the insurance contracts can vary widely from one location to another. And if every office is contracted differently with different reimbursements and participation structures, it creates a very messy, inefficient system that can leave a lot of money on the table. So we help standardize the participation across the locations using our pre negotiated fee schedules. So every practice under the group can maximize revenue without the administrative nightmare of renegotiating every contract individually. And I will also say another huge benefit is patient retention across locations. I mean, patients want convenience, and when a practice has multiple locations, being in network under the same agreement makes it easier for them to stay within the group. And if a patient moves across town or needs to see a specialist within that network, having that uniform participation, that definitely ensures continue receiving care without disruptions.
Well, good, and thank you for taking that in those parts. You answered my questions there, but related to scaling, gosh, without some kind of standardization like you all are offering, I mean, things are gonna head south in fairly short order, so I'm very glad that you can cover all those bases for clients, and you have with ours as well. Okay, so knowing that you all have collaborated on a number of clients, Aiden, I wanna start with you first here. Without having to name a client, can you recall a story, like one where you had significant impact on revenue in working together?
Yeah, one particular client was an oral surgery group in the Northern Virginia area, and a successful practice at that. And they needed some opportunity to increase revenue because as their fixed cost structure that we talk about so often continued to increase, their ability to negotiate fees independently was difficult. And often, and I think this is going to resonate with a lot of the listeners, is that there are some groups out there that will try to negotiate fees for you, and often they'll come back and they've have been unable to get anything meaningful, or if anything at all. So just to give a little bit of history, when I spoke with Katina, another client had introduced me to what DAG does. And being somewhat of a skeptic, I just, every pointed question that I had, Katina had an answer for. And what I love about what they do is they are first very high touch white glove. They're in constant contact with myself if I'm representing the organization, more importantly with the team internally. They're analytically driven, as they've spoken about earlier. So in this particular practice, what we were able to do was provide the team at DAG over a time frame that they requested all of their claim submissions and codes. And then they would layer over their reimbursement fee schedule with the current one and be able to give you a really true marker of what the impact can be, apples to apples. Okay. And in this one particular practice, we saw an increase of about $500,000 in the first year just from fee schedule change with DAG. And if you think about how that looks to the bottom line, outside of paying the provider their percentage of production or collections, nearly all of that falls to the bottom line. So there's no additional overhead or costs that go into there. But what you are able to do is benefit from this consortium that they're in. I don't know if consortium is the right word, but their guaranteed fee schedule, and you bring in a lot of predictability. And then if you can also couple that with expansive dentistry, that's where I call the X factor comes in from a consulting side, is that now the additional dentistry that they're doing will yield greater dividends. That particular office is really one of probably 10 now that we've worked on together because the relationship has been so symbiotic that I have yet to come across a group that I have not felt could benefit from the fee schedule that DAG can provide and the service they can combine. And more importantly, the convenience, like they talked about unwinding all these different plans into a smaller group. So that one I was really, really happy about, really proud of, because they were already a successful practice and they weren't doing it from a position of weakness, but all they did was really just enhance their model.
Yes, this group was already amazing. Like he said, we just enhanced it a little bit. I do remember meeting with the insurance coordinator, trying to just figure out all the credentialing, and each doctor was credentialed differently. She was great. She had this huge spreadsheet of each doctor and each location and each plan and how they were credentialed. So she had her system working for her, but we were able to go in and simplify that to where all the doctors are credentialed the same way. And I believe they had 10 to 12 contracts, direct contracts, and we took that down to 4, with the majority of them all being on the one fee schedule, which was amazing. And we also, the contracts that we got them out of and put our fee schedule in place, it was a 12 to 18% increase per fee schedule, which was phenomenal with the $500,000 annual increase. So it was a win-win for all concerned, right?
Yeah, it was. And to this day, they are still working with you all. I still keep in contact with them. And I have yet to come across anybody that has not been not only happy with the level of service, but also that DAG delivers on what they say they will deliver. And there's no kind of area that was overlooked in the beginning, right? There's no catch to it. So that's why we have continued to talk often. And when I do recognize that there's a potential for lift within a group practice that just doesn't have the type of buying power or negotiating power that DAG does, I send over my introduction to Katina and her team, and they often can get as quickly as they can get the information, as quickly as the DAG analytics team can put that together and give them a very realistic view of what the outcomes look for. And now it's back onto the practice to continue operating efficiently and continuing to grow through new patients and enhanced dentistry. And with that, the relationship with DAG will just make that far more valuable.
Well, I love you have this great story to share, and I know there are many others, but in the interest of time, we just wanted to give a great example of how you all work together. And Aiden, you and I have talked about DAG so many times and how they're helping our clients. And so I'm very glad that we had some time to shine some light on you all today, because we really appreciate what you do. Well, I know our listeners are going to be reaching out after today's episode. DAG's a wonderful resource with a very experienced team. And since our aim is to grow your business, their support has to be part of your foundation. Aiden, thanks for joining me today. Our audience always loves hearing about your experience. And Katina and Cynthia, we so appreciate your time and expertise. And I know our listeners will too. Katina, what's the best way for our listeners to connect with you?
The best way would be to go to our website, dentaladvocacygroup.com. There's a couple ways they can connect. There's one tab that says Contact Us. It just asks for their name, practice name, phone number, email. They can put a message in there. And if they can just let us know that they heard about us through this podcast, that would be wonderful for us to know. And or if they want to give a little bit more information, they can do a practice assessment, which gives us more information. So when we speak with them, we have an overall view of what's going on in the practice, what their goals are, what their challenges are. So it kind of speeds up the process and letting us know what their needs are.
Absolutely. And then we'll be sure to link to your website in the show notes as well. Well, and there's a lot more to learn from Dental Advocacy Group. So go ahead and reach out to Katina and Cynthia directly. Again, in the show notes for you, and they'll be glad to help. And if you'd like to connect with us here at Polaris to learn about any of our expert advisory services, or maybe there's a topic that we haven't covered that you'd like to hear about, you can send us an email to info@polarishealthcarepartners.com, or you can reach us by visiting the website at polarishealthcarepartners.com. Thanks so much for being a loyal listener and subscriber. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you on the next episode of the Group Practice Accelerator Podcast.